To start off, I have a 7.5-inch diameter oven-safe domed bowl and an 8-inch round cake pan. I'm going to lightly grease these and then line them with parchment paper so that the cake does not stick. You might need 2 of these 8-inch round cake pans because we're going to have to bake the cake twice, but if you don't have 2, you can just reuse it again. I am lining the bowl by adding a small parchment circle in the center, and then I'm going to add parchment strips vertically around the bowl to ensure that the cake does not stick in the sides. I'm adding my cake batter onto my cake pan. I'm a little more than halfway. Now for the domed bowl, I am adding this about 3/4 of the way high because this is not going to rise very much because it is a steep domed bowl. I baked these off at 350 degrees. The small 8-inch round cake pan baked in about 30 minutes, maybe 25, depending on how much cake batter you added. And the domed one took about an hour to an hour and 5 minutes. Once these are done, you want to let these cool at room temperature inside the pan for about 10 minutes, and then you can put them in the fridge and let them cool for about an hour, just to be sure that they are completely cool before you start leveling them and filling them with buttercream. I level these using a ruler just to be sure that my layers are all even, and then I stack them to be sure that the cake is evenly layered, and then I just start filling them with my chocolate chip cookie dough buttercream. Once I finish with my first 4 layers, I add a cake board in between, and I place some dowels under the cake board first to keep the cake stable and give us some support, and then I start adding my top layers, and I also place dowels inside of those to give the cake extra support. Once I'm done completely stacking my cake, I am going to crumb coat the whole thing in my delicious buttercream, and then I'm going to let it set in the fridge for a couple minutes. Once my cake has set, I am going to add some white fondant just on the top layer of the cake. I trim off the excess fondant and then I start the decorating process on the top layer. For one side, it's going to be R2-D2, and for the other half, it's going to be C-3PO. So I'm using some Wilton Color Mist spray in gold and in silver to color each half of the top dome. I added a little tube-looking bolt at the top of the head because both R2-D2 and C-3PO have that in the top of the head. And I also added the little lens that R2-D2 has in the side of his head. With some modeling chocolate, I am adding C-3PO's features, such as the eyes and just more pronounced features that he has to give it more depth. I'm adding it with the modeling chocolate onto the fondant, and then I'm going to spray that with some more of the gold color mist spray. I'm adding these bolt and gadget looking things that C-3PO has on the side of his head. He also has this thing in the back of his head that kind of looks like a wheel or something in the back of his head, and this is made out of modeling chocolate. I'm just securing everything on there, and then I am going to spray this with the final coat of the Wilton Color Mist spray in gold. As I spray one side, I am covering the other side with a napkin so that the colors don't blend, and then I will let that other side dry, and then I'll repeat the process on the opposite side. I made C-3PO's eye out of fondant, which I dyed copper and a little bit of orange mixed together, and I also sprayed it with a little bit of the color mist spray just to give it some sheen and make it look like glass. And I'm going to add the black pupil in the center of that. Now for the stormtrooper, which is going to be the face that's on the bottom of C-3PO, I have some more white modeling chocolate. And I am going to just create tubes and shapes to make that really pronounced kind of gas mask looking structure that the stormtroopers have. Once I'm happy with the structure that I have, I'm going to roll my white fondant over that part of the cake. Once I've placed the fondant over that, I'm going to smooth it on, and then I'm going to trim any excess fondant from the bottom. The side of the stormtrooper's face has these earphone looking things, which I'm going to make out of more modeling chocolate. And then I'm just going to add any extra details that the stormtrooper face has in the front. Now for the final character, which is going to be on the bottom of R2-D2, it's going to be Darth Vader. So I'm grabbing some more modeling chocolate, and I am going to create that really pronounced mask that Darth Vader has. I'm going to create that out of modeling chocolate, and then I'm going to add the black fondant over it. So once I got that kind of triangular shape that Darth Vader's mask has, I added the black fondant over it, and I am just sealing it in place, and then I'm going to trim off any excess fondant from the bottom. I'm going to finish off by adding the little tubes that Darth Vader has in between his mouth mask, whatever it's supposed to be. I'm just finishing up the final details in the mask, and then I'm going to move on to the cape that he has on the side of his head that kind of runs down. Now I am adding the nose and the little bolt that he has on the side of his mask by the mouth. And I just sprayed those silver to give them a little sheen, and I am just adding those onto the face. And then I'm moving on to the cape that runs down the side of his face. And I'm going to make that out of modeling chocolate, and because modeling chocolate actually holds its shape more than fondant does, and then I'm actually going to cover it with more black fondant. Now with my fondant smoother, I am just smoothing out any seams and smoothing the fondant on so that it sticks really well and adheres to the modeling chocolate, and also so that it gives us a really nice smooth finish. Now moving back to R2-D2, which I saved for last because he has the most details, I am rolling out some blue fondant, and I am just going to add the little blue squares and lenses that he has all over his face. If you look at R2-D2, you'll notice that he has like indented lines and squares. So with a knife, a really small paring knife, I'm just making those indented squares and lines around all the little lenses and squares that he has all over him. Finally, I'm going to add the little colored buttons that he has. He has two little small turquoise buttons, and he has one big red button under the little lens eye that he has. And my Star Wars inspired mashup cake is complete. We have C-3PO and R2-D2 on top, and Stormtrooper and Darth Vader on the bottom.